How are you? Right. You're all being live streamed around to hundreds of millions of viewers. Seriously speaking, imagine how many malachim now.
Making soup.
You can see him where?
I'm doing it here at 9 o'clock.
Find it now.
Because my sister's yacht is tomorrow. The yacht is tomorrow.
If there's whiskey available, we'll definitely.
Well, hang on. Oh, I've got some whiskey.
I've not seen him then.
I don't have yacht actually. My sister's yacht. No one. Junior baby. No one learns anything.
How old was she? There's actually loads and loads of halachas on today's daf. So we need to get English. Well, the last thing we talked about yesterday was that Shmini Atzeres is a Yom Tov on its own. Rashi says regarding Succa Nulav, Tais says regarding Avelus. There's an interesting Levushe Svod. I don't know if anybody's aware. It should never be in the Gal Maisa. If a person loses his wife, how many Yomim Tovim should he wait before he remarries? 3. Very good. Who said 3? Oh, very good. Oh, see, says the Moshe Svod that Succa says Shmini Atzeres is ready too, and that's what the Gemara means. Regel b'fnei atzmo. It's his own Yom Tov. It's his own Yom Tov regarding the 3. Okay, I don't want to go into it because I've got a lot to do. It says the next Mishnah Memches Modalef. Halal, the mitzvah of halal, Rashi says to say the entire halal. Simcha. What does it mean to be Simcha? Rashi says, Shalmei Simcha Tid Kavon to Simcha Shmoina or all 8 days, 7 days of Sukkot, 1 day of Shmini Atzeres. Ketzat. When Lamadis teaches us Chai Vadam B'Halalu B'Simcha B'Chvoid Yom Tov V'Achvin Shel. Even on Shmini Atzeres, a person has to do Halal Simcha and Kavod. Keshar Kol Yemei Chag, just like the rest of Sukkot. Just like the rest of Sukkot, you have to be Halal. Let's say the whole Halal. Simcha Eid Shama Simcha and Kavod. Also, you have to on Shmini Atzeres. What does kavod mean? Kavod means to dress in a mechubadik way. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Tov Kuf Lamed that you're not allowed to wear weekday clothes on Chol HaMoed. I'm always makpid to wear a tie on Chol HaMoed, even when I'm walking along the promenade or go to a soft play with a difficult thing someone has to do for children. And you come out with a headache which requires 5 paracetamol.
That's why I have to come to wine every day.
Oh, but there's a mitzvah of covered on Chol HaMoed.
How do you have to play it?
Listen, Karedits. Somebody wrote a truth to listen, Karedits. Are you allowed to hit your children on Chol HaMoed? Because there's a mitzvah of simcha on Chol HaMoed. So he says, yes. That's not what he writes. He writes, the Rambam says, that simcha shnitz tavinu boy, the simcha that we require is simcha shel mitzvah. And therefore, since it makes a child to do more mitzvahs, therefore you're allowed to hit a child in Chol HaMoed as well. That is a card, it doesn't work hitting. But what we're talking about is, I get the point. The main kud I want to bring out, and that's not a joke, is that there's a mitzvah of covered right through the entire Yom Tov Chol HaMoed, and the Mishmor is quite harsh things. The Mognavom writes that the Chol HaMoed clothes should be as good, if not better, than your Shabbos clothes. Chol HaMoed clothes. Mishnah Berurah in Tov Kuf Lamed Sha'at Sinitsky and Dalet has a huge arichus to disagree with this point. It says it has to be nicer than your weekday clothes, but not nicer than your Shabbos clothes, the Chol HaMoed clothes, not like the Mogen Avon. But the Maisa, it's an important point to be aware that there's a mitzvah of simcha and covered right for Chol HaMoed. It says how do we know that there's a mitzvah to be happy on Shmini Atzeres? The Tonu Rabban. V'yisa ach sameach, he should be happy. That's to include the night of Shmini Atzeres. That means the way Rashi explains is the Torah already told us the Smachta should be happy for 7 days. The Torah already told us to be happy for 7 days. So what's Vayisach Sameach coming to include more than the 7 days? The answer is the night of Shmini Atzeres. Once you've included the night of Shmini Atzeres, says Rashi, Kal v'chayma, the morning of Shmini Atzeres.
Why would you originally say only the night?
Oh, but why would you say not the night of Shmini Atzeres?
Just the night. Why?
Because you can only include one thing. We'll see. We'll come to it a bit more. I just want to point out, we did discuss it a bit. Unfortunately, our memory is not brilliant. Is a more Pesachim Anal from Mudalef has the exact same drasha. And Rashi there writes that Shmini Atzeres at night there's a mitzvah to be Simcha, but there's no mitzvah of Simcha in the morning of Shmini Atzeres. There isn't any mitzvah. He brings the same Gemara, exactly the same Gemara, because it says obviously Yom Tov. And there Tesis says, I should know the Rashi in Succa contradicts himself, and what Rashi in Succa says is correct. Tesis there tells us there's a mitzvah to be B'Simcha also on the morning of Shmini Atzeres. Now, what is Simcha? Is Shalmei Simcha. Shalmei Simcha is Korbanos of Simcha. You cannot be a Korban at night. It's impossible. So, in fact, the first, okay, let's just see the more, a bit more inside. Or maybe not. Maybe it's coming to include the first night Sukkot. Ach always limits, but only. Cholak, it divides, it differentiates. So we've got one pasuk ach to limit, one pasuk sameach to include. What made you include the night of Shmini Atzeres and exclude the night of Sukkot, the first night of Sukkot? Since there's a din of being simcha neshana rabba, so I include also night of Shmini Atzeres before. So therefore, the halacha is that the night, first night Sukkot, there's no mitzvah to be b'simcha. But the first night Shmini Atzeres, there is a mitzvah to be b'simcha. It makes small enough kiminas regarding what meal you should make, etc. But the Eka mitzvah of simcha is night Shmini Atzeres. And as Rashi says, it's Rashi like this: all the other nights of Yom Tov you don't need to include, because it is obvious when the Torah says Shivas Yomim is coming to include more days, all the days and night. But here when the Torah says ach sameach, ach limiting sameach, including, the Torah is obviously coming to tell you a limited thing that there's more simcha for. And what could that be? That could be the night of Shmini Atzeres. There's a very, very famous Vilna Gaon. One of the famous there is that, and it's very interesting, is the Maritz Chir, so the back of the Gemara brings it. So just Hako Toma, read it very quickly. That the word ach usually only excludes. V'kan doish lerabbis ub'shem hagon hachosid moenu arav eliyom mevilna shomati. I heard from Eliyom mevilna. That's what we call the Gaon. Like this. Sukkot, you've got loads of mitzvahs. Succa, Sechamayim, Lulav. When it comes to Shmini Atzeres, there's not a single mitzvah. There's no mitzvahs left, right? No Succa, no Lulav, no Sechamayim, nothing. V'yisa, you shall be ach, only sameach. All you have left is the simcha. That is why the Gemara sees fit to include Shmini Atzeres in the drasha, because Rabbi very clear. There must be a mitzvah of Succa, Lulav, Simcha. The kanama ach sameach. Hanu miut tevak simcha v'lei Succa v'lulav. V'hanu yom tevach dein shavak simcha v'suloi. So therefore, it's coming to tell you, and he says with Nochin, he likes his pshat, and he gets very excited about it. Okay, so the idea is, v'yisu ach sameach. All you have left is simcha. When is that? That's Shmini Atzeres, because the whole Yom Tov everything. That is why we celebrate Simchas Torah, which is a huge day of simcha on Shmini Atzeres, because the Torah told us all you have left is simcha. Okay. I want to go further because we've got a lot to cover. Let's see what Mishnah. Sukkah Shiva Ketzah. Mitzvah Sukkah for 7 days. How do you do it? Goma Melechol, you finish eating on the Shana Rabbah afternoon. Lo Yate Sukkah, so you can't take down your Sukkah. Avol Moedes Akelim, you can take your vessels, like your couches, your chairs, Mina Mincha Lamala for Mincha and further. Let's say you've got your couches and your tables in your Sukkah. And now you want to get it ready for Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, so you're allowed to for Mincha. Which mincha says the Ritva? Mincha Ketana. When is Mincha Ketana?
6.5.
No, that's mincha. It's always very hard to remember. That's Mincha Ketana. Tana is the later one. 2.5 hours. You're not allowed to take anything out of your sukkah till 2.5 hours before Shkia. Now, why are you not allowed to dismantle your sukkah in Shana Rabbah morning? Why do you have to wait? Why are you not allowed to dismantle? You're not allowed to dismantle your sukkah. Okay, so eat your 40 meals and then dismantle the sukkah. What? Again, you're not allowed to dismantle the sukkah. Why is she not allowed to dismantle the sukkah? What? So Rashi says, let's see Rashi. So the you might need a meal, and if you take it down, what are you going to do? You'll have no sukkah. Says Rashi, therefore you're not allowed to take it because you might come to eat. You might need to eat. Says the Van, no, that's how it can't be. The reason is By Succa Teishu Shiva Asyamim, we dashed earlier, they have to have a Sukkah for 7 days. There's a mitzvah, the Sukkah should be built for all 7 days. If you knock it down, you've only got 6 days of Sukkah. The Be'iri writes, it's a zilzul in Sukkah. You're showing that you're, so to speak, so desperate to get rid of it, kick it straight down. There's a halachic nafkemina between these reasons. Anybody can guess, it's quite straightforward. We actually discuss it. If you definitely don't need, but better than that. A very simple situation. Oh, if you've got 2 or 3 sukkahs, can you knock any of them down? It's a whole shayla in the poskim. Oh, that's right. If you go to the park and build one, or if you've got one for Steve, say that. You're not allowed to. Mishmur says you can. Mishmur says you can. I shouldn't say. Mishmur says you can if you know you've got another sukkah, you're allowed to. But it actually says that the person should not take down the sukkah to be choshesh for the van and the meiri, not like Rashi, that there's a chison in taking down the sukkah. Oh, yeah.
That's very different.
Can you say it's like working?
That's it.
You're not working for them, idea.
Okay, we talk about maybe an easy job, because sometimes it's not a major job. Right. The Kaf HaChaim writes that there's some people that bring Shmini Atzeres in early. Now, in England, it's anyway, you sit in the sukkah. Let's in Eretz Yisrael. What are you going to do? If you bring Shmini Atzeres early, what are you going to do? Sit in the sukkah, not sit in the sukkah? You have to sit in the sukkah because it's still sukkahs, because you brought Shmini Atzeres early. But in Kiddush, what you're going to say, and you're going to end up doing something which doesn't make any sense. You're going to be sitting in the sukkah and saying, thank Hashem for Shmini Atzeres. But you let him bring it in on the afternoon of Hoshana Rabbah. You bring it in early.
Shabbos, not Friday.
But over here, if you bring in, let's say, Yom Tov Motzei Shabbos early, you can't say it's not Shabbos. You can't take away the Kedusha of Shabbos. It says Kaf HaChaim.
What do you do about Leisha?
Get to the Kaf HaChaim, right? I was bring it. You are not allowed to bring in Shmini Atzeres early, because if you do so, you're going to have a major issue with what you're going to do on the sukkah. So you cannot. We still sit in the sukkah, so it's fine. Yes,
it's still the same stira though.
Why? No, because we're doing it because it's a sveka to we're not sure if it's Shmini Atzeres or sukkahs. But people that say that's all, they can't. You can't bring Shmini Atzeres early because you can't say thank Hashem for Shmini Atzeres and then go and sit in the sukkah. Okay, we don't do it. Right. Okay. Says the Gemara, what happens if you've got nothing to take out? What should you do? If you've got nothing to take out, what did you use? What did you sit on? Which table did you sit on? What happens if you've got nowhere to take your cane? That means like this. Now it's quite common. Or even in England, if you've got built-in sukkah, so what happens is you're going to, right, it's no longer sukkahs. So now you've got nowhere else to take your couches to. Now, what's the problem? Let's, for example, let's say you build a sukkah there. So you're enjoying the sukkah. You like it sitting in the sukkah. The problem is, on Shmini Atzeres, you can't sit in the sukkah. Why can't you sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres? Or Ba'atoisa. It's one Ba'atoisa. The Shmini pains to point out that it's not the Issa of Ba'atoisa. This is not the real Issa of Ba'atoisa. Because you have no intention. What? Because you have no intention of doing it. Now in England, everybody closes the roof, so you've got no problem. You want, like, let's say, for example, you want to sit in the sukkah, you have no problem. Close the roof, it's a possible sukkah. But let's say, for example, you live in a country where you don't have a roof. You don't have a roof to close the sukkah. So now, if you sit in the sukkah, even if your intention is not doing a Shem mitzvah, but at the end of the day, everybody thinks you're doing a Shem mitzvah. So it's os, it's ma'asoi. So therefore, you're not allowed to sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. Now, let's discuss it in Eretz Yisrael before we go to our day in England. So in Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael, you come home, Hoshana Rabbah by night. You sat in the sukkah all day. You slept in the sukkah all day. You go to shul to bring Shmini Atzeres, and you come home, and now you want to carry on sitting in the sukkah. So what should you do? You don't want to. You've got no roof to close. It's a kosher sukkah. It's a problem. Says the Gemara, you take away before Yom Tov comes in 4 tefachim of schach, leaving an air gap of 4 tefachim. Says Rashi. Rashi doesn't say so much. Let's see Tosas. The Tema says this. I don't understand this, and he does not answer this question. We did it when I was away, so I think that the halacha is how much for schach possible you need 4 tefachim. For air, how much you need to make it possible? Anybody remember? 3 tefachim. That means for some reason, air, we'll discuss this, air is worse than schach possible. So if you, for example, a fluorescent light in your sukkah, And if the rest of the night goes across this chach, it's less than 3 tvachim, it's less than 4 tvachim, you're okay. But if you've got an air gap in your sukkah, let's say, for example, you didn't put the schach evenly, and you got 3 tvachim air gap, you've passed your sukkah, right? Fake day says, I don't understand. You're taking away 4 tvachim. Who cares to take away 4 tvachim? Says Tema Mashiu Zebaba, it passes every sukkah and airspace of 3 tvachim. Why does one say 4? And Tesis leaves it as a kasha. There are 2 answers in the Poiskim and makes an afkimun. Some say it means you take away schach. You don't want to sit in the airspace. It might rain on you. You might get cold of draft. So you put on it posel schach. Now, if you're going for posel schach there, you're going to be back to the halacha posel schach. So therefore, you need 4 tvachim. I hope this is clear. Right? It says take away 4 tvachim. Why 4? Take away 3 and make it possible. You want to make the sukkah possible. Why do you want to make the sukkah possible? Because you want to sit on Shmini Atzeres. So it says take away 3. Answer: if you take away 3 and then you put in there, let's say, plastic board, you're back to having schach posel. Schach posel is only possible by 4, not by 3. So therefore, you have to take away 4. Others say, Mishra brings both of these explanations down. He likes the other one, the second one more. That since it's your job for Ma'aseh Ayin, if you take away only 3 tvachim, it's true the sukkah is possible, but most people will be unaware that the sukkah is possible. You want to make a big gap that everybody should be aware that the sukkah is possible. Therefore, says Mishra, it's not enough to find some complicated way of making a sukkah possible. You have to do something that everybody that walks in, that's a possible sukkah. And Mishra paskins this. Therefore, if you want to sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, as I said, in England it's less than a ger, because in England most people have a roof. You just close the roof, you got a nice proper possible sukkah, but on Succa. But it's less in Etzor, or a person has the outdoors, so you have to do something to make it clearly possible. So what do? You take away 4 tvachim. Okay. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, you light a candle. A candle in a very, very, very cramped sukkah makes it very, very, very uncomfortable. If you've got a tight sukkah, 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, and you've got a candle there, the whole time you're scared of catching on fire, so you're not going to be able to be comfortable, says possible. The Gemara says, V'lo pligi, halon v'halo. The Gemara explains like this. In Chutz La'aretz, you cannot light a candle. Why can't you light a candle? Because in the Chutz La'aretz, you still need to sit in the sukkah. Because Shmini Atzeres is a suffix sukkah. So we passed earlier that you have to sit in the sukkah. So you can't light in the sukkah because you'll be uncomfortable. All you can do is, you can make part of it possible and then sit in the other part. Ma'ashekin in Eretz Yisrael, since in the end of the day there's no mitzvah to sit in the sukkah at all, you can make the whole thing possible putting in a candle. A candle works in a small sukkah. Sukkah gedola ma'ikel meima. What are you going to do with a big sukkah where lighting a candle doesn't make it possible? Because lighting a candle makes it very uncomfortable to sit there. What about a sukkah? You put inside it bowls of food which have already been eaten from, which are dirty. We all know the halacha that cups you can leave in the sukkah all the time, but dirty plates out of the sukkah. It says, well, if you want to make your sukkah possible, what should you do? Bring in dirty plates. Oh, very good. So it's asking an unbelievable question. If it doesn't pass, let's back to square one. You've got Ma'aseh Ayin, everything is sitting in the kosher sukkah. If you look at the Melchamos and the Balamur and the Raiva, the Sukkah's Raiva, they all ask the question. And there are 2 schools of thought. And again, Mishra brings both halacha and ma'aseh. One is that from here we see that a dirty plate makes the sukkah possible. Mishra says, therefore, Yirei Shomayim, should be very, very careful to take out dirty plates as soon as possible. Because why you got dirty plates in the sukkah, it's possible. No, because what happens is it's only while when you're finished, when it's off-putting. Sometimes you sit 5 days, everybody's eating, and then after you said you stopped eating, and the plates and then it starts being off-putting. Once that happens, the sukkah is possible. That is the shitta of the Raavad. What?
If you normally would do that on a Friday night, why did you say that they didn't do it? It didn't like normal.
But because it's off-putting. At the end of the day, when you go to a really nice place, they take off the plate when it accumulates.
Yeah, it's not the plate.
Oh, so that is just a survivor. Vishbo brings it in again. I can't cover this off by heart, but nice Vishbo brings it. But most Rishonim say that since the whole business of it is only because of Ma'aseh Ayin, therefore, by putting in plates, which everybody knows are not supposed to be in the sukkah, that makes sure that people realize they're not really being mekayim mitzvah of sukkah, and therefore that's okay. It's a hecker. It's a hecker. Oh, and as I said, it's not about tasting properly because you are not actually intending to be mekayim mitzvah. There's a very big shiloh over here. I try and say it as there's Rashi. The words of Rashi imply that if somebody sits in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres in Chutz La'aretz, he must also do something that people should realize that it's not as obligated as normal sukkahs. No, on Shmini Atzeres. And everybody disagrees with it. And the people, not everybody, this is something which is disturbed by the Rishonim. Shmuel says, I'm not going to tell you Shittas Rashi because so many people disagree with him. That's what he writes in the Shatzir. That there's a chiyuv according to Rashi on Shmini Atzeres. Simchas Torah, everybody says you have to do something to make it clear. But the question is on Shmini Atzeres, when you sit in the sukkah, since there's a shitta, since you're not mechuyev, do you have to do anything to make it clear that you're not sitting in the sukkah l'shem mitzvah? That is something which the Mishnah brought. This will discuss this over here. Right. Okay. That's one thing. I just say it's some of the words from the Sfas Emes, the scary world. He says like this. The Mishnah says, Sukkah Shiva Ketzad. There's a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah. What's the halachas? What's the first halacha? If somebody say to you, how do you keep the mitzvah of sukkah for 7 days? What would you say? Eat there, sleep there, learn that. Says the Mishnah, don't knock down your sukkah at the end of the 7 days. Like, okay, like that's the last halacha maybe. That's not how you keep the mitzvah. So the Sfas Emes, because if you get rid of the sukkah quickly, that what to say? No, all the other ones is the next one, for example, Nisach Hamayim Ketzad. Always it's got Ketzad, and then it describes how to do the mitzvah. Here, on the 7th day. No, Sukkah Shiva means Sukkah for all 7 days. Doesn't mean on the 7th. No, like the previous Mishnah and the next Mishnah, it always means all. He says that if you go out of the Sukkah, even for a couple of meals, it shows that you weren't really interested in being in the Sukkah. So the Mishnah says, how are you mekayim the 7 days of Sukkahs? Is if you make sure to stay in the Sukkah right through the 7 days and you don't leave out of it early. Once you leave early, that shows that you were never really in it, so to speak, properly. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Nisach Hamayim Ketzad. There was a special mitzvah called Nisach Hamayim. How did they do it? The mitzvah Nisach Hamayim was the mitzvah that they did more joy than any other mitzvah in the whole 630 mitzvahs. Can you imagine? More joy was displayed in the mitzvah Nisach Hamayim than any other. And we'll talk about it, but it's a nice word from our but we've got running out of time. Why by Nisach Hamayim? We think about it for a couple of days, so we'll get to it. Why by Nisach Hamayim, of all mitzvahs, do they do more joy than any other mitzvah, right? Shema, Tefillin, Tzitzis, any of them. Nothing like Nisach Hamayim. What? Sorry?
To get the water so it shouldn't get tummy.
No, that's to Apar Aduma. Here, this was quite easy mitzvahs. You talk about the Apar Aduma water. This was quite easy. Ketzat. Sluchish Zav, a bowl, golden bowl. It held 3 lug. How much is 3 lug in nowadays measurements? Approximately. How much? 1.5 liters. Very good. That's what I would have said. 1.5 liters. According to Chaznish, to be precise, it's 1.8 liters. According to Chaim Noah, to be precise, it's 1.44 approximately. So between 1.44 and 1.8 liters, about the size. How much is that bottle of Coke? 1.75. How much is it? Yeah. So approximately that's similar to that size, but it was a bowl, it wasn't a bottle. It was made out of gold. He went down to the Shiluach, which was a spring next to Yerushalayim. They came to the gate of the water, Toku, and they blew the shofar. I'm just going to show a couple of pictures because over here, we haven't had pictures for a long time. And they would come, some of the pictures are more important than others. They came through Shamayim. They would come through a special gate, which was only used once a year, well, not once a year, 7 days of the year, to bring in a bowl of water. Oh, no, just a few people. Only one person carried the bowl, but everybody would accompany him. Toku the blue tkiya to a tkiya. He gula Shamayim. So I'm going backwards. So sorry, I made a mistake. No, Toku Olo Bakevich went up to the ramp. Apollo the Smoila, he went to the left of the ramp, right? So can you see? It's good to see. He goes up the ramp and he turns left. Article have also got they've got more like a diagram rather than a picture. He turned left. Some of them have anything. Talking with Oliver Kirsch for the Spolish. There were 2 silver bowls. Rabbi Yehuda you're made out of lime or plaster. And but they looked silver, means they looked dark because of wine. That means really made out of plaster. But after years of putting wine on them, so they changed color and they looked silver. They were discolored. It's very interesting that Tis asks a very strong question. Anybody think of a good question? We have the principle, which tells us that what? We never go from a high to low. What material was the bowl when they drew the water? Gold. What did they pour it into?
Lime.
Silver or lime. And Jesus says, if you remember the Shulchan, the Lechem upon him, they made the whole effort to use metal then gold. You always go higher, here you're going lower. But this is a very ancient Chiddush, that since it was connected to the Mizbeach, it was part of the Mizbeach. So it wasn't a bowl, it was a building. Going from a bowl to a building is a Malin Bakodesh. If you've got time to read it, so then it's the bottom choices. Okay. They had holes at the top of the Chesed base. These two bowls had two holes, like two nostrils. One person would pour water, one can pour water, one can would pour wine, and they would pour it simultaneously. To pour it simultaneously, they wanted they should finish at the same time. The Gemara brings two explanations why one needs to be thicker. Either because there was more wine than water. There was more wine than water, or because it was thicker. It was more viscous. It was thicker. So you have to make it wider. Now here we have a fascinating machlokes Rashi Tosfos, beautiful machlokes Rashi Tosfos. And actually, I must admit, I said to somebody it was worth buying this. I had to get up all this. I said for this one picture, because this Tosfos, Succa Tosfos, got a whole avichus about it. And if you just read the Tosfos, you will struggle a little bit with what Tosfos means. And these pictures help a little bit. If you look very carefully, what? Yeah, I suppose so. You can't see. You need to take a picture of this and this. These are the two pictures. Basically like this. You have two bowls, and they would go from the bowl onto the Mizbeach. So you have a bowl you put in, and it's got a pipe, which looks a bit like a nostril coming out. Silver or lime, yes. That's right. Can you see them? You can't see. You can already see. Okay. So now, there's a machlokes Rashi Tosfos. Where was the hole in the bowl? Tosfos says, which he says he thinks is very, very logical, that the hole was at the bottom of the bowl. That's the second picture. The second picture is Succa Tosfos. Like a funnel. Yes, like a funnel. Can you see the picture? Everybody seems to be struggling with this picture. Not that.
It's the first one.
Well, the first picture is Tosfos. The first picture is the bowl, and at the bottom of the bowl there was a little hole to come out. Rashi says it's the other picture where what happened was a bit like a spout. So you pour it into the bowl, and the spout looks like a nostril coming out. Okay. Going back into the Mishnah, one was thick, one was thin. They should finish at the same time. The western one, the western bowl, Shalmayim was made. It was for the water. Mizrachi, the eastern one, Shalyayim was for wine. Now, what happens if the Kohen mixed it up? We pour the wine into the water bowl, the water into the wine bowl. Says the Mishnah. If you do it into the wrong bowl, you're okay. He would use one lug. How much is a lug? Half a liter approximately. Kol shmoina. He argues about two things. What's the two things he argues? Tanakama says 3 lug, and he says 1 lug. And Tanakama says 7 days. He says 8 days. Right? But the one who poured it, they would say to him, pour from high. The reason they would ask you to pour from high, that they could be able to clearly see what he's trying to do. Right? Must remember, Nisach HaMayim is not written in the Torah clearly, not written anywhere. So therefore, the Tzdukim did not believe in it. So Shepamachas Nisach Echad Agabi Raglov, as a zilzul to Beis Hamikdash, what did he do? He poured it over his feet. Again, they stoned him with their svogim, and not just the svogim, they then threw stones at him, and then they killed him. They killed him for pouring the water on his feet. Why? Which Avera did he do? Which Avera did he do? Because the Mishnah writes that the halacha is in that Apikoros, if you can arrange to kill him, you've got a mitzvah to kill him. And he was an Apikoros. So therefore, mitzvah to kill him. So they stoned him. No. So you weren't listening. You were too involved in the pictures. There was a Tzduki that didn't believe in Nisach HaMayim. So what he did was he poured the water over his feet, as if he needs the water to wash his feet.
You need a warning to go.
Not this mitzvah, this halacha that's
doesn't say he was
before she said, okay. So one of them poured over his feet, so they stoned him with a swigim and with stones, and they killed him. And therefore, from then on, they said, pour from high. If you pour from high, we can see what you're doing to make sure no monkey business. Okay. They did exactly the same thing on Shabbos. You can't carry the water from the stream to the base of Mikdash on Shabbos. Carrying is a problem. So you would carry the water before Shabbos. What's the problem with doing it before Shabbos? Is the halacha is that any water which is in the base of Mikdash, which is in a bowl, has to be used that day. Any korban has to be used that day. Otherwise, it's called what? Lina. Anything which stays overnight is no good. So they had to use it that day. Well, you can't use it that day because they would collect the water on Friday. So what did they do? They put it in a bowl which had no kedusha, and in that way it didn't matter. Says the Gemara, Mishnah, finished off. He left it in the chamber. Nishpach got spilt on your scars, got revealed. Or you could take from the kiyah because the kiyah never had a problem of lina. Why did the kiyah never have a problem of lina? That's not what the more nuance says. There's a machine that would lower it into the stream, so it was connected to the stream. Any wine or water which is revealed is possible from Mizbeach. In old days, even some people just nowadays, nobody would ever drink water or wine which was revealed. Why not? What's wrong with snakes? Why can't you use it for the Mizbeach? And here we have a fascinating machlok. There's unbelievable, a lot of interesting things today. Rashi says that you have to have 3 lug of water, 3 lug of wine. If a snake swallowed a bit and threw in its poison, you don't have 3 lug of water. What do you have? You have 2.99 lug of water and 0.1 of poison. So you haven't got the right amount. So it's no good. This says no, nothing to do with that. For a much more simple reason. What's the reason? Because if you won't drink it yourself, would you give it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a gift? Let's just see the tastes inside, the second to bottom tastes. Maybe a snake drank. The poison is part of the liquid, so you've got the poison is the whole thing. Maybe the having that would be true. Would you bring it to a minister? Water which you can't drink yourself, you wouldn't. Okay. Says the stuff you can't have it revealed. It says, how do you know that you blow the shofar when you draw water? And you draw water with joy. Since you draw water with joy, so therefore you blow the trumpet to show your joy. The next Gemara is one of these strange Gemaras, which is obviously the Gaon says it's all Kabbalistic. But we'll read it and I can't tell you much about it. Hanu Trei Mini, there were 2 apikosim, 2 heretics. Chad, one Shmei Sosim was called Sosim, the Chad one was called Shmei Simcha was called Simcha. Amalei Sosim and Simcha, now different minoch. I'm greater than you. How do I know I'm greater than you? Dichsiv Sosim and Simcha Yasigu. Which one's mentioned first? Sosim greater. Amalei Simcha Sosim, no, you're wrong. And now different minoch, I'm greater than you. Dichsiv Simcha Sosim Ayud. Which one's mentioned first? Simcha. So Amalei Sosim and Simcha. Sosim said to Simcha, Chad Yomi, one day eventually, Shavkuch, you're going to lose your position. But Shavich Pabanki, you're just going to be like a messenger. Dichsiv Simcha said, say you with Simcha. You will use Simcha as a messenger to leave. Like he will be in charge of directing us which way to go. But he'll be like the shlach, like the slave, to direct us what to do. So Simcha will be like the lowly person. So they said, no. One day Shavkuch will reject you. Will get you to draw water. Before she explain, Mashal says this pshat, that the Apikosim will never listen to Chazal to understand the Pasuk. And because of that, they'll get themselves confused with Succa. And here we're making fun of them, that they were trying to understand something from a Pasuk, and every time they tried, the other person proved the other way around. Just to prove that if you read the Pasuk without trying to really understand it, you're going to come up with crazy conclusions. And that's what the Pogmos that we're trying to do, is to make fun of the Tzdukim of Kosim that would come up with Pshatim in the Pasuk without trying to delve into it. The Gaon says, Mama mentions this also, is that Simcha and Sasa are 2 different midas. One is simcha, is inner joy. Sosan is outer joy. And each one's got its own Maila. Outer joy can generate inner joy if a person does it correctly. Inner joy is what we really want to get to. And therefore, they were actually arguing on some very deep philosophical ideas of it. There was Epicurus, the Shmei Sos, his name was Sos, and he said that before. Eventually, when it comes to Tchias HaMeisim, you'll all be drawing me water. That's what Epicurus said. You'll draw water for Sosin. If you said draw water for Sosin, keep the comments, maybe like you said. It says we draw water with Sosin. Moshchit Gava will skin you and take the skin. And Ashwina Neguda will use the skin to make it into a leather pouch. Umalina Beimaya will use it to draw water. Ushafta Mayim Besosin will use Sosin to draw water. What? No, it's Tchias HaMeisim. I'm going on to Tchias HaMeisim. Okay. Olo Bakevish. We would go up to the ramp for this will of anybody goes up the ramp. You always go up to the right. We once had a special posuk to Darshan it Psochim, and it also mentioned in Zvachim that you go always to the right, and then you go from the right. That's you always go to the right here. So you go up the ramp this way, go round, and you come down that way. You always go like that. You always go to right and you circle the Mizbeach. Except for these three things. What are? They go up on the left, they go back on themselves, they retrace their steps. They go up on this side of the Mizbech, and then they come back on themselves. They go up on the left side, and they come back on themselves. What are these three things? The water, which would fall on Succas, and the wine, which would fall also on every time you bought a korban. The bird, because when there was too much of it on the east. Normally, you'd walk around the Mizbeach following to your right-hand side. The problem is that the place for the Nisach HaMayim and Nisach HaYayin was on this corner. If you'd walk around the Mizbeach, how much distance would you cover approximately? Approximately 100 amos. Because you'd have 24 on each side, and you must remember you're going up, etc. So you're going quite a distance. 100 amos with a bowl of wine, when there's a huge fire or bowl of water, what might happen to the wine and the water?
Spill.
Not spill it. They shouldn't say spill.
Evaporate.
It'll get smelly. And a bird, if you take a bird all the way around, it might die from the smoke. So you go up and you retrace. You can't go back on yourself that way because you never go to your left. Rashi says you can't turn your back. Rashi go all kinds of nice. You have to retrace your steps. You go up, then you go down there. Now normally, Ola Soif was done over here, but sometimes there were too many people doing Ola Soif, so then you had to do it over here. Does anybody know why they did Ola Soif over here? Kohen should know. Why did they do Ola Soif over here? What happened to the stomach of the Ola Soif? I hope you're all good at sports. What did they do with the stomach of the? They had to throw it about 20 amos, which is over 10 meters, from here to the floor over here, which gets swallowed up. Now, the problem is, it was a very light thing, which is very hard to throw, a very soft, I just think a soft ball, 20 amos. And then, if there were too many people here, which one would they go to? They'd go to that one, this one would be too far. We'd have to throw it from here till there, over a distance of over 40 amos, just to be able to get it over the ramp, to get it in. But that's why they use this place for the Ola Soif, and it gets swallowed up in this back. What else got swallowed up there? The ash of what? No, not the oilers. The ash of the menorah. The ashes of the menorah. Every day you clean the menorah. And not too much sedation, but right, sorry, too much sedation. Yes, I thought you meant too much sedation. And also the Mizbeach Hazor would get swallowed up there. Okay. Says the Gemara. Elu Shem Ashchin. The bowls got black. Why did the bowls get black? No, the dark. Why did they get dark? The wine. The problem is there were two bowls. Now, if it was silver, fine. But if they were white and then they got dark because of wine, but one of the bowls never had wine, they only had water, so how did it ever get dark? What's the answer? Because every softer mixed it up. And if they mixed it up, was it okay or not? Okay. Mishnah says clearly it was okay. Since if they got mixed up, it was okay, every softer would get mixed up. And therefore it got dark. You're right, it would pour wrong. Yeah, here. The wine gets dark, and why would the water get dark? If you pour the water into the wine, and the wine into the water, yotza. Also the water gets dark. Mishnah says they had two holes, one thicker than the other, wider than the other, for the purpose that they should both finish at the same time. The Gemara now discusses which opinion is that like. We had in our Mishnah, did they use 3 lug of water or 1 lug of water? How much wine? Wine was always 3 lug. So the Gemara says like this. You always used to use a lug, and wine is 3 lug. So if wine is 3 lug and the water is 1 lug, that's why you have to have a much thicker one for the wine. It's exactly the same amount. One says no. Wine is thick, water is thin. Wine is viscous, and therefore it takes longer to go through. It says, well, prove it to you. It's like the chomim. Why? There's a difference between saying thick and thin and wide and narrow. Thick and thin implies a similar size hole, just slightly bigger, slightly smaller. Wide and narrow indicate a completely different size hole. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there was 1 lug of water and 3 lug of wine. And the wine is both thicker and 3 times as much. So the hole had to be much, 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 much bigger. According to the Chachomim, it was only a difference between thick and thin wine, so wine to water, so therefore you need a small difference. The Lashon of the Mishnah, the language of the Mishnah does not imply a huge difference in the size of hole. The language of the Mishnah is simply that one was a bit wide and one was a bit narrower, not that one was wide and one was narrow. So our Mishnah is going like who? Like the Chachamim, not like Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara. He holds wide and thin. The time of Yehuda is 2 bowls of Yusham. Echad Shemaim, Echad Shidayin. Yain Pir Rocha was very wide. Shemaim Pir Kotze. They should them call us Achas. In order to be finished at the same time. Shemaim, you know it's good vibe. Ma'avoy Shemaim Chuluton Abon. Ma'isa B'Tztuki Echad. Was it Tztuki? Shedisach Kavi Raglov. They poured water over his feet. Again, and they stoned him with their sword. The corner of the Mizbeach became cracked, chipped, better words. They brought a handful of salt with tamur and they closed it off. Not because it's kosher la'avodah. The Mizbeach should not look damaged. Top of my testing with that. I just want to point out, the Mon Zvachim discusses the halacha of the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach had to be whole. If the Mizbeach was cracked, it was no good. The Mizbeach was made out of 2 things. It was made out of stone and like a cement. The halacha is, if one of the stones had even a tiniest crack, to the extent that if you'd rub your fingernail, you'd feel it, the Mizbeach would be possible. Regarding the cement, though, to hold it together, that was only possible if a big piece was missing. The more that big is a machlekes, how big a piece. The Rambam paskins the size of a fist. The Kesef Mishnah writes, where did the Rambam get the Psak Halacha from? From this Gemara. Because the Gemara over here says that they had to fill up the hole. What did they use? A fistful of salt. And obviously they felt that the Mizbeach was possible. And what did they use to fill it up? A fistful of salt is a raya that we're talking about the size of a fist becomes possible. So again, a stone on his back that's got the smallest dent, crack, or chip is no good.
Not because it was possible.
No, it was possible. Not that made it kosher, it was still possible. No, it's good that you pointed out, but no, the more means like this, that it was actually possible, you couldn't use it anymore that day. Shekol Mizbeach, any Mizbeach she'en lo kevesh doesn't have a ramp, lo kern, not a horn, lo yesod, and not a foundation, lo ribuah, it's not square, possible avodah, it's possible avodah. It also had to have a ledge. If it didn't have a ledge, it's also possible. Rashi goes a bit length to explain each one. Basically, whenever the Torah uses the word hamizbeach, it's to teach you that thing is me'akav. And regarding all these things, it says hamizbeach. Regarding the sovev, you should just know it's very, very important. So Rashi at the end of Truma discusses this, and it's a shame that people sometimes don't know. Round the Mizbeach, there was an adornment. Can you see it? It was a wooden carving that went around the entire Mizbeach. The Torah calls Kalkuv HaMizbeach Ulamata. The Torah uses the word Kalkuv. There's Machlokes Tanoim, what does the word Kalkuv mean? There's Kalkuv, they were both next to each other. If you look very, very carefully, that ledge which the Kohanim could walk around the Mizbeach, right? They could walk around it, was just above this carving. The Torah says that the carving was at the half of the Mizbeach. There's machlokes on knowing what the kalkuv means. Does the kalkuv mean the carving, or does the kalkuv mean the ledge? This machlokes is the machlokes over here. What is ma'akev and Mizbeach? If kalkuv means the ledge, it's ma'akev. If kalkuv means a drawing, it's ma'akev. I have a bit of a problem that we need to finish a day early in order to go to the sim. I've got so many more days. Could I do another 5 minutes? Because everything just a little bit more? We think it's a mistake. Truth is, we'll finish the perk tomorrow, maybe. Just a little bit more. Shittin. The shittin, these are the bowls and the pipes that the wine and the water would flow down. They were created from the beginning of the world. Your hidden thighs, or like jewelry, made by craftsmen. They were hidden because they were hidden pipes. Yurechayich is like the foot of the Mizbeach, Yerech Mizbeach, by the foot of the Mizbeach, because they were at the bottom part of the Mizbeach. K'moy elu hashitim, k'moy chaloim, the Gemara translates shemuchulolin, they were hollow, v'yodin ad ha'tahom. They went all the way into the depths. Ma'aseh de'omon, zu ma'aseh de'omnoseh shlach d'shmoch. This was done by the skilled craftsmanship of Hashem. Toled ve'avishmo bereshis atik bereshis elaboro shis. Hashem created shis. Shis is the word of the shisin, the pipes. Bereshis, Hashem created the pipes. The first thing that Hashem created when He created the world was He created these deep pipes of the Mizbeach, which we'll also need to discuss when we discuss as to why they made such joy with the we'll discuss why the first Hashem created was this. Okay, we'll be able to finish tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll finish with Perk. If anybody can bring a L'chaim, it's a very nice thing. And next Wednesday already there's going to be a sim with Hashem on the whole Masechet Succa. Which we learned a very lot because a lot of Lachal and Maisa.